something.
All right, flip your camera around. There
There
you
you
go.
go.
There you go. All right, so we're back. I think that's some great points that everybody brought up, especially about Kizzy. I think that was a great point that you brought up about not wanting to relinquish power, which that goes a million different ways. One of the things that that the article also talked about is just that, along with relinquishing power, that people want to live separately still. Again, in a relationship, but don't want to give up their house to move in with the other person. Don't want to give up their luxuries. Don't want to give up the old lifestyle. Although they're saying that they want to be in a relationship. Have you seen that? Have you heard about that? Have your friends talked about that? Whereas they say, "Hey, I know I'm moving in with this guy. I know we're married, but like the old saying the ladies used to say, make sure you keep your little bank account on the side for a rainy day, or stash you some money away, or some of the guys say, I'm not gonna give up my bachelor pad because you never know, I may need to get away for a second. Have you seen that in your circle of friends, anyone?
For sure. I mean, particularly in my age group. I mean, I'm 37 years old, and I feel like the older I get, the older my circle gets, the less those who aren't in relationships want to give up. Um, so it's just very interesting to see, because I've been friends with a lot of the people in my circle for a long time, and I've seen them go through cycles, and before they've been more open and more flexible, as opposed to now that they're older, more set in their ways. There's less that they're willing to negotiate, and less that they're willing to give up.
Pete, the lady's been talking a lot. Help me out.
Oh, I actually, I can't hear
Uh oh.
a play account, with the guys. A lot of time where there's an account where they could have like the guys' night and not have to worry about is this budgeted for the family needs. So there is definitely a divide when it comes to finances. With and I think that's a new thing. Uh, where I grew up, or there's some families I witnessed as a kid, you would see one person control the finances, but everybody would pool funds together. Whereas now it's kind of like, well, that's your account, this is my account. Or if you do see a joint account, everybody kind of has their own little side account. So it just kind of seems like it's become normal and acceptable.
Okay. Deborah, you look like you anxious to say
Yeah.
something.
Well, you know what, I struggle with that because for me in my house that doesn't work. Um, but I have seen couples who have separated funds per se and had had bills that they each were responsible for and still had funds for themselves. Um, I personally don't agree with that. I think when you become committed, or when you become in a relationship, not only are we joining two lives together as one, but everything else that comes along with that. It works better for me in my house that we continue on that particular journey. But I have seen some situations where that does work, and neither wife nor husband has issue with it. So if it becomes a power struggle, then you may not want to do that because that causes division. And therefore, you become as this is mine and that's yours. And that's not what commitment and relationship is about.
Great points, everybody. Speaking of commitment and relationships, I think one of the biggest questions is just the definition and meaning of marriage these days, and the definition and meaning of relationships. The older generation may say that a relationship was more out of necessity sometimes, whereas it took two people to pool their monies and finances and things together just to have a quality of life that they were looking for. Yes, they loved each other, and yes, they were building something, but because that society may have been a little bit different, it took two to live the life that they wanted to. Yes, they got married for love. Yes, they were courting and all that good stuff. Whereas today's society is more out of status quo first, maybe. What is your status in society? Do you live up to my standards? Do you meet my expectations? What do you think, or what do y'all think the definition and meaning of marriage and relationships are today?
Larry, I think in generations past, It's biblical. It wasn't out of necessity. Even when we were slaves, um, they even had the good sense to follow the Bible. And the Bible says, you bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. You shall be called woman. She was taken out of a man. God created man, and then he made woman. And marriage is God's fix to the fact that man should not live alone. And that's considered marriage. So I don't believe it was out of necessity that they did those things. Now, today, nobody believes that they have to have anybody for anything. It's convenience. And if it's an inconvenience, we don't do it.
Peter, Kiss Mary.
I can see why Deborah's saying that, and I do see that with some people, but I also do see another side of that, whereas it's not as biblical. I do believe it's more of the as opposed to the necessity or survival, as the article had put, it's more of the experience. But I do see that there is more of like a friendship almost, where there are people do marry because there definitely there are joint interests in the type of lives they want to live, or things that they have in common, or things that they do want to share. So I do see that in a lot of new marriages, both in my generation, and also the younger generation, people that I see getting married now, 12 years after myself. I do still see the same thing, where we like to travel together. We like there's this common interest, and so they join together. It may not be grounded by God for that particular couple, but it's not. It still does have that partnership, that man and woman join, flesh of my flesh, part of it.
What holds them though, Pete?
Well, I mean, it's an individual thing. For myself, it's different. But what I do here is it's like, I guess the best way to put it is, the goal of marrying your best friend, the person you do want to, be with for the rest of your life, and see yourself with, laugh with, cry with, raise children with, the person that you trust the most, the person you can share your secrets with. That's the person that can see the ugly side of you and still accept and love you. So the love, I guess love is what holds them. And I do know for many spiritual people, love and God coexist. Whereas these days, whereas God does not have the same importance in some relationships, they do still say that they can love and not have to be we're marrying because that's what the Lord wants. There is the love of each other. And it's serving of the relationship of that joining together.
I actually feel like people shy away from marriage more. I think that people have become very complacent and more comfortable with just living together and not going into the realm of marriage again to not be fully accountable. I think that, a lot of people that I've seen, or, from what I've seen and from what I notice, I think that people are just become very comfortable with just, okay, we live together, we share expenses, that's it, especially, for example, if there's a child involved and rent involved, okay, it's like we're married, but we're not married, but we do everything together anyway, so why get married? I think accountability is the biggest piece. People just don't want to give fully of themselves and take that full commitment, because once you do, it's almost like there's no turning back kind of thing. And again, just going back to people being self-centered and selfish, I think that people are shying away less from marriage, I think. I think I have both in my world. I see both sides, but I want to say that I see that part more.
Mm-hmm. Are we doing a good job as to explaining what marriage is biblically? Because I think we've lost that. And because of that, I think people are saying, well, yeah, it's just easier to cohabitate. I don't think they really understand biblically what marriage is.
And I
Uh,
think, go ahead, Pete. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I I do believe we are not doing a good job at explaining that. I do believe a lot of the churches are not doing a good job, or ministers are not doing a good job explaining that. Even in the congregations where people do attend, I don't think that they're receiving that. And then also well, I mean, I can only speak of this country that I live in. I don't know what it's like in other places, but you see it's more acceptable to cohabitate. Where you see partners are recognized without actually having to go through the institution of marriage because of maybe the amount of time they live together by state law, or there's certain partnership rights now that people would receive. I mean, there's no way that people would not have gotten married in the past, just for the simple fact that if something happens to my loved one, I want to be able to, have access to them in the hospital and be able to say, yes, that is my spouse. I'm here for them. Whereas now you can have those rights without actually having to go through the institution of marriage. It's become more of a government thing and less of a church or godly institution. Is what I've noticed.
And that's a great point. I was just piggyback on that. Just the sanctity and union of marriage has been diminished greatly. Whereas people really genuinely married for love. They married because this is, like you said, Pete, this is someone I want to share my life with. This is someone I want to grow old with. Whereas now, as everybody said, it's convenient. As Kids Mary said, it's not being responsible, not being accountable to anybody. I can just take the easy road out, and I don't have to have the pressures of being in a marriage and being responsible to somebody else, being committed to somebody else, being considerate of somebody, putting my own needs to the side for somebody else. Because the easiest, quickest thing, if I don't like it, I can just walk away, no strings attached. So it does get really mixed up a little bit, which brings a great, great, great question for everybody. How people choose their spouses, their partners in life. Do you see a drastic difference from the early 70s, early 80s to now we're into the early 2000s as far as how people choose the person that they want to be with as opposed to the person that they probably should be with? Do you see a huge difference?
Of course I do. Go ahead, Pete.
Sorry, I don't see a difference. Maybe from the 80s. Maybe there's a difference from the 60s or 50s why people choose their spouse. But I believe that the same reason why I chose my spouse and my parents chose each other is the same. And I believe that in my circle of friends, it was the same decision making. So I don't really see that in my circle why the reasons to get married have changed. But yeah, that's pretty much. I don't have anything else to add to that. I think I don't really see a difference from then now. And not to go back to the previous subject, but I think also the people just deciding we don't have to get married, we can cohabitate. I think that's not a new thing. I think it's just become more acceptable, and more out in the open. I believe back in the 70s and 80s, people were living together without getting married, but it wasn't as public because of fear of judgment from society. Whereas now, no one feels the need to hide that. So that's just what I've witnessed.
I think, people do yearn, the falling in love piece and the wanting, for lack of a better term, a cliche. They want the love story. But I think that, a lot of dating and everything leading up to marriage is it's become a very guarded process. It's become almost like a fear-based process. And, I think, again, that people, who maybe are not having much success in their relationships or with their relationships because they keep picking the same person. Looks different, but it's the same person you dated 3 people ago. So, it's like people are not learning their lessons in relationships. They're not really growing from relationships, I think they get stuck in a very tunnel vision kind of view. But I think that the yearning is there. I just think that people have become lost in how to attain it. I think that, people don't write love letters anymore. I think that people don't serenade out. I want to serenade somebody out there. I want to be serenaded. I think the romancing piece is gone. The creativity, the passion. Social media has completely ruined that. Like, don't text me. I want to hear your voice. Don't, write me a letter. All that stuff is gone, and I think that that's what's one of the biggest pieces that's missing. Those original things that used to get people connected aren't there anymore. So I think that even though things have changed from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s, times have changed. Obviously, I think the yearning is still there. I just think people are lost and don't know how to get it or what to do to get it.
And the church said amen.
Very good, very good. And kids, you must have known my next question, because my final question for everybody, and y'all chime in however y'all want to, is social media's effect on relationships. And what you said was on point. The necessity to be personal, to be intentional, to go the extra step to be in a relationship, write a love letter, pick up the phone and call somebody, serenade somebody, plan a date. All of that stuff seems to have gone out the window, especially with the online dating. Online dating has taken on a life of itself, from the actual online dating to the speed dating, whereas the computer does all of the legwork and you just show up now. The whole idea of love at first sight seems to be null and void these days, because you click on a computer, you go through a series of questions, you get a response in return, you look at an application, okay, that person looks good on paper. How do y'all feel online dating has changed just the whole concept of relationships as a whole, from dating all the way to marriage? Has it been a good thing or has it been a bad thing?
Bad thing. It's created lazy romance, which lazy romance equals to no romance at all. People have forgotten how to start a conversation. People have forgotten, just the basics of, like, saying hi, how are you, and not feel like when somebody says hi, how are you, that they automatically want something from you. We've become so paranoid that when, I haven't been single for a long time, thank Lord, but I can imagine myself being out there, someone coming up to me and saying hi, how are you. It's like, it's just become, I don't know, robotic. People have lost their. People have become socially inept. Is what it is, and they don't. I think that there just has to be a way for people to try to go back to the basics. I don't know, Peter.
I have an issue with online dating. Just I pretty much missed that boat. Call me old fashioned. I remember friends of mine were dating on certain websites where they were finding couples of similar interest. There were similar websites for ethnic backgrounds, and so you could find Latin people on this side, or Latin people like dating black people on this side, or black people dating black. So I remember hearing about that right after I met the woman that I was going to marry. So for me, I didn't even have that experience or could venture into that, because I had already decided I was going to marry this person. But just hearing about it, it's just become so normal now. When I meet a couple and I ask them where they met, I remember years ago when I meet a couple and I ask them where they met, they almost tried to make up a story, and then I find out later they really met through online dating, because it was like a taboo. Whereas now, 10 years later, it's no longer a taboo. People are not embarrassed to say they met through eHarmony or some online dating website. And for me, I feel that I'm glad that that's not how I met my loved one. And I felt that if my relationship didn't work out, I would not go ahead and set up an account for that for sake of convenience, so I could get back to my TV show after I've logged on and sent an email blast to the 10 women that I'm looking at their profiles. I'm just not interested in that type of lifestyle. But at the same time, I don't feel that you should go to a bar and drink alcohol 4 or 5 days a week trying to meet that special someone. But like Kismary said, people are inept to how to have a conversation. I do. It's funny. A friend of mine had asked another friend to throw a party and invite couples over and invite single friends that are looking for relationships over so that they can meet somebody, and then so others in this party can meet somebody. That was a great idea, doing something like that, because this person's struggling to meet somebody with similar interests, somebody with same spirituality, same faith, same goals when it comes to children. So they went to their circle of friends, their circle of family, um, and I felt that was a great way to go, as opposed to going to the bar, but then also an even better way to go than going to the internet. So I'm completely against online dating, but it just seems that this is, I don't want to say the future, but it's people are proud and bragging about how lucky they were to meet so and so through online dating.
So what do y'all say? What do y'all say about those that say, "Man, my schedule is so hectic. I'm working 65, 70 hours a week. Um, I just don't have the time to get out there and date and look. And it's more convenient for me to get online and look at these profiles and see who's comparable to me, who I may like, or whatever the case may be, and just set up."
Well,
Go ahead.
I work 65, 70 hours a week, and I'm in a relationship, and I'm required to make time for that relationship. There are 177 hours in a week, and so how are you going to make time for a relationship when you say that I work 70 hours a week and I don't have the time to find that special someone? Well, how are you going to maintain that special someone once you find them, whether it's through the internet? Are you guys going to continue seeing each other through the internet because you still work 70 hours a week? So I just feel that that's an excuse.
I got you.
And I feel in that instance, if you're single, and you are working those hours, maybe it's not time for you to be in a relationship. Maybe you just need to pull back and wait till a later date where you can actually find some time to commit to a relationship.
That's exactly right.
And this is my last and final thought for the evening. For someone who is looking for a relationship, someone who is somewhere in the middle, they have old generation morals and ideas about a relationship, but they still want to incorporate the new generation's social media, online dating, technology, just the new way of going about a relationship. What advice would you give to somebody that's genuinely searching for a relationship and a marriage, genuinely searching for a spouse, but is uncertain of how to find that person and how to sustain it?
So are you asking recommendations of where they should look, or are you asking for what advice I should give that person?
What advice would you give that person?
Well, Larry, you know me, I'm old school. And the Bible says, "He that findeth a wife findeth a good thing." That's first and foremost. Um, I heard what Peter said about having a party. I think that's a great idea. Word of mouth. Um, as far as you know what your friends are like, and you know what expectations they have. The online dating, that's totally out of my generation. I have no knowledge of that whatsoever. Um, but I think like, kind, and equivalent, um, family, friends, I think that's a good way of introducing people to one another. Um, I'm of the old school where I want to see you face to face. I don't want to watch you on TV, or I don't want to see you on the screen. And if my girlfriend has a recommendation, because we're tight, she knows what I like. And if she has a recommendation and say, "Hey, Deb, I think, this person would be good, or that person would be good," I would take her advice rather than me taking a chance on something else that I was totally unfamiliar with.
I apologize. My computer went out for a second. I'm back. I'm
My advice
sorry.
is be authentic, be yourself, be comfortable in your own skin, especially if you want the same in return from the person that you want to be dating, regardless of what vehicle you choose to date, whether it be online, whether it be parties, whether it be however. Um, put the game plan, and don't make people who you date or people that you meet pay for your past or your previous relationships. Learn to give people a clean slate. I think that if you're in the process of trying to find true love, you cannot live in the past. You have to be able to also put in the work and be willing to give what you're expecting back from the person. You want good things to happen, you want great things to happen, you got to work for it. Everything takes work, relationships, you name it, you got to work for it. And people, that's the biggest thing. Be prepared to pull your sleeves up.
Peter?
I feel that, well, I was fortunate to find a relationship that mattered most to me without having to look for one. And I just think that that's going to happen in God's time. You're going to find that special someone. But in the meantime, you should be developing yourself, whether it's through, time in your church, time dedicating, to a charity, to the youth, time dedicated to a hobby, to creativity, to expanding your way of thinking, your openness. I think you're gonna attract, that someone of joint quality and morals by you continuing to expand what's within you and bring it out there. You're obviously not gonna find that person if you just go to work and go home and throw on the TV or get on the internet. But you will find that person if you're out there, developing yourself, whether it's through there's all these adult education seminars where people can go to these classes and work on themselves, whether it's they do it for business or if they do it for just personal life. Those things are available. The church, many churches have many, other than just the masses. They also have many classes and groups that get together where they talk about different topics and subjects. I mean, it's just, you're sitting in a room full of people that are like-minded. How is this special someone not going to be sitting there when it's that time? So I think that if you're out there doing certain things, whether it is charity or something creative in life, then you will attract that person and they will be introduced to you or introduce themselves to you. That'll be the advice I give.
Well, I thank y'all much for joining me on BrotherWord TV. Some great advice, some great information for those that have been watching, those that will watch. I think you've heard some great concepts and ideas on the future of relationships, the past of relationships, and how the two merge. What has been clearly stated is that relationships are about accountability and responsibility. That in order to be in a relationship, you have to pull up your sleeves and put in the work, as Kis Mary said. As Peter said, you have to go out there and actually put in the effort to find the person that is compatible to you and then work on making that relationship work. As Deborah has said, you have to mix into some biblical ways, and that, where God leads, those will follow. So you have to put a combination of things, but most importantly, you have to do what your heart says is right for you. There is no tried and true way. There is no one way of doing anything. Any relationship is based on those two people that are in that relationship. So thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Kis Mary. Thank you, Peter. And signing off for BrotherWord TV. The more you think, the more you think. Take care.
Good night.